Katerina, the first days of talks, the first talks of the day, I should say, are underway in the city. What's been said so far, and what sort of results do you think might the day bring?
Well, so far, Bill, the summit is just getting underway. The North Atlantic Council is taking place at the moment, and many issues relevant to the NATO summit agenda and to all other participants that are here in Romania are being discussed. Of course, Russia, as a member of this event, although not a member of NATO, is also raising some of the issues that are relevant and will be even further discussed at the upcoming Russia-NATO Council. Amongst those issues is the perhaps one of the major stumbling blocks in Russia-NATO and Russia-US relations, and that is the Washington-led plans for anti-missile defense elements in Eastern Europe. Now, at an earlier event, Konstantin Kosachev, the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Russian State Duma, spoke on the matter. This is what he had to say.
Right now, Russia is the only country with ballistic missiles within the range of this missile system. So to start to develop that system without any consultations with Russia, without any attempts to reach an agreement in advance, is of course a matter of great concern for us.
So that matter is still being discussed very closely, and no doubt will be even discussed in even more detail when the Russian President Vladimir Putin arrives here in the Romanian capital to participate in the Russia-NATO Council. But many other issues are, of course, on the agenda. That is the possible participation and exception of Georgia and Ukraine into the alliance, the situation in Afghanistan, and many other issues. My colleague Alexandra Kosharnitska looked a little bit more closely at what is on the agenda and what has already happened here in Bucharest.
Nothing unites better than a common enemy, and it seemed at the Bucharest conference it was found: Russia.
Russia is acting quite aggressive and very quickly.
They put themselves as a direct adversaries to NATO.
It's an opinion that has been echoed among many, especially from the former Soviet bloc countries.
We have to admit that all former communist states, and to a greater degree Russia, that will have to overcome the logic of the Cold War.
Kremlin doesn't hide its misgivings over the further expansion of NATO close to its borders. When the USSR collapsed, Moscow was promised the alliance would not come close to its borders. That promise was broken, and so was the trust. Georgia's and Ukraine's presidents can't wait to get a map that will lead them to NATO, even without the support of their people. But directions might not be offered.
We have doubts whether we have given enough time to the people of Ukraine to develop a more comfortable view about eventual NATO membership, about their future within NATO. And we have some similar hesitations about Georgia.
Georgia doesn't have control over the regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. The two fought for their independence in the early 90s and drove the Georgian forces out. As for Ukraine, an overwhelming majority of people there, including many in political circles, do not want to join. The US president offered support to his Ukrainian counterpart during his visit to Kiev ahead of the summit. And for some, what the US wants, NATO wants.
To conclude, the general sense was that membership action plan for Georgia and Ukraine is a matter not of whether, but of when. That was a shared sense around the table.
Washington's position on NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia adds tension to the already complicated relations with Moscow due to the US plans to deploy its missile defense system in Eastern Europe. Many hope for a breakthrough during the meeting in Sochi between George Bush and Vladimir Putin.
I'm going to meet with President Putin to make it clear to him the Cold War is over and Russia's not our enemy.
While the picture of NATO-Russian relations might not be perfect, there are still areas of cooperation among them, like fighting drug trafficking. Russia is also ready to provide transit routes through its territory to Afghanistan for peaceful purposes.
The main problem we're facing now concerns the new Russia-NATO document. Our partners don't want to accept the very philosophy of the partnership, which to our mind means that the security of one country or a group of countries should not be achieved at the expense of a third country. It's obvious.
This building was erected during the rule of Nicolae Ceausescu, Romania's last communist leader. Since then, the Berlin Wall fell, the Warsaw Pact dissolved, and the Soviet Union, together with its influence, disappeared. Today, NATO has at least 9 former Soviet bloc countries in its ranks and is considering bringing in the former Soviet republics. But in Moscow, they say the West is still learning to treat Russia as a partner, not as adversary. Alexandra Kashornitskaya, Russia Today, Bucharest.
And indeed, better understanding and closer cooperation is what both the Alliance and Russia hope to achieve out of the upcoming Russia-NATO Council.
Katerina, we know that much of the opposition to Georgia and Ukraine's entry comes from the alliance members being wary not to provoke, to antagonize Russia. Do you think that Russia is expecting closer ties, better relations with NATO resulting from this summit?
Well, both sides have stressed the fact that they do want closer cooperation, better understanding of each other, and many projects are already in play. Many more projects are being developed to bring the cooperation between NATO and Russia to a new level of understanding. A project that is commonly expected to be signed here during the Russia-NATO Council is an agreement that would allow supplies to Afghanistan to be humanitarian supplies to be delivered to Afghanistan through Russian territory. Many many joint projects in the areas of fighting drug trafficking and anti-terrorism campaigns, all those are in the works and also being developed, but still a lot of stumbling points still do persist in the relationship. Many issues such as the anti-missile defense system, the unilateral declaration of independence by Kosovo, NATO's expansion, all those issues still continue to divide Russia and NATO, but both sides do seem to have a lot of hope in coming to some sort of compromise, or at least reaching a new level of understanding during President Putin's time in Bucharest.
Well, let's see what happens tomorrow, because that's the key day, of course, when the Russia-NATO Council meeting takes place. But no doubt we'll be hearing from you from Bucharest as the rest of the day's events take place there in the Romanian capital. Thanks very much, Katerina, for that update. Now, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is an alliance of 26 independent countries from North America and Europe. It was created on the 4th of April 1949, following the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty. The primary goal of the founding states was to safeguard the freedom and security of member countries by any political and military means, specifically against the Soviet Union. Throughout its almost 60 years in existence, NATO's had several stages of expansion, each introducing new members. The latest took place in March 2004, where countries from the Balkans and Eastern Europe were signed up. A number of other countries are currently seeking NATO membership, among them, as we're already reporting here, Georgia and Ukraine. Well, up to a third of NATO members oppose Ukraine and Georgia's bid for entry, but as Russia Today's political commentator Peter Lavelle has told us, the two countries would have had a better chance with Russian support.
It was the wrong way of doing it. What it ended up being was anti-Russian, and you couldn't get a coalition of countries doing it. Here we go. Here's this graphic right now. Here are the countries in the alliance who just simply couldn't get on board. They were given the wrong map. It would turn into an anti-Russian thing. They didn't want to offend Russia. But actually, at the end of the day, it didn't really increase security for NATO. It actually gave more risks. Ukraine is divided. Georgia is not a complete sovereign state right now. This is not a bad way of going about it. If we get this kind of expansion that Russia didn't want off the table, then they talk about commonalities. Afghanistan, drugs trade, anti-terrorism. This is what the two bodies, Russia and NATO, can work towards.
Our correspondent Alexandra Koshenitskaya spoke exclusively to Dmitry Peskov. He's the first deputy press attaché to the president of Russia. He says it's not just Russia that believes NATO expansion would be a bad move.
In our understanding, NATO is offering something wrong. This is definite. This is definite. It's not the most important actually situation when Russia is not happy with that. The most important one is that people of these countries are not happy with that. So if we look at Ukraine, the overwhelming majority of the population is strictly against NATO membership of the country. If we take Georgia, two republics of this country that never took part in the voting referendum whether to become a NATO member or not, I mean Abkhazia and South Ossetia. So it is also known that they strictly do not favor this idea. So, and if we hypothetically imagine that NATO has become a member of NATO, that Georgia has become a member of NATO, we can easily understand that this, to the contrary, it won't bring additional peace and stability. It will lead to further disintegration of the country. And of course, Georgia is our neighbor, and we stand for territorial integrity of Georgia. But at the same time, we have certain concerns for not taking into account opinion of the population of some regions of the above-mentioned republics. So that's why it looks very artificial. It looks like dragging those countries into NATO.
So is there any condition under which Russia will accept the membership of Ukraine and Georgia?
This is an extremely wrong perception that Russia is seeking a right for veto. And this is being wrongly perceived by lots of countries that will be represented during the summit. Certainly we don't have a right for veto in the alliance, and we're not seeking one. But we have a right to expect reciprocity while trying to be constructive with our partners. We have a right to hope that our concerns, our voice is heard by our partners. And when we see a complete refusal to listen to our concerns, when we see a refusal first to speak and then to act, and when we see an attempt to cover some steps that are not comfortable for us by trying to, let's say, to discuss them, certainly it does not make us happy. And this is this we expect should be understandable for everyone. This is not that we are demanding everything. I mean, we just use our right to bring our concerns to the table of negotiations. And we do hope that the political